Hello everybody and welcome to Dynamic GT League's No Championship for race 3 at the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit. Before we do have a look at how qualifying went, let's take a quick look at the current championship standings. SGP leading the way on 35 points with Steve F1 right behind him on 33, Conrad not too far away on 30. In 4th we've got Mitch on 28 points and he's 4 ahead of Demon R in 5th, and then we've got SRI currently sitting in 6th place on 19 points, 1 ahead of Jason and a few ahead of Jimmy in 8th on 12 points. Fluffy's in 9th on 11 while Twilight sits in 10 for 10. David Harp's in 11th place on 8 points, and we've got Hay and Rich Blues joint 12th place both on 7 points, and we've got Formula Gary, Art Pal, Tyler and Bunsell. Okay, let's have a look at the qualifying result, and it's been close so far this season. Is it going to be close again? Well, the answer to that is yes, very. SGP takes pole position with a 127.308, but Steve F1 was right there with him with a 127.364. Bit of a gap then back to Demon R in 3rd place at 27.7, but then we've got Mitch also a 27.7, Conrad on the 27.8, SRI on the 27.9, Jason on the 28.0, Dave the Harp on a 28.0 that is almost the same time. It is ridiculously close. In 9th place we've got Formula Gary on a 28.2, and he's only just ahead of Twilight, and there's a little bit of a gap to Fluffy in 11th, but then it's really close with him and Art Pound, Jimmy and Rich Blues. Hay also there as well. Bunsell takes the 16th place. But one thing we've seen over the course of this championship so far is that the gaps in qualifying are not very big at all, which means that the gaps in the racers are also not that big either. Okay, I think it's time for me to be quiet for a few seconds, and let's hand over to the commentary team. And joining me on commentary here at the Red Bull Ring Grand Prix circuit, it's Steve. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, thank you, Dave. How are you?
Oh, I'm absolutely great. I've been up for a bit of a walk in the hills and got lost up a tree. Someone who isn't lost though is SGP. He's just he's up a pole, or is that on a pole? I think he's on a pole. I don't know what his name is though. Either way, we've got two Steves on the front row of the grid as we wait for the lights to go out, and away they go. And it looks like a decent start from Steve F1. SGP has got way too much wheel spin there.
Yeah, it looks like it's been okay for SGP though. He's got the lead, crucially got the lead into turn 1. Steve F1 in 2nd, and yeah, really close behind him. Connor on the back of Mitch.
Yeah, Connor had a decent start last week, and he's trying to make another decent start here as him and Mitch are pressuring Demon R in towards turn 2. As we can see the pack forming in the background. Oh, Mitch all out of shape. He's gone big time wide. Conrad going around the outside of Demon R round 2.
Yeah, look like Mitch just got up on the curve, and that got him sideways, and then getting stopped, and that's lost him a bit of ground. So that's bad news for him. But look at the gap already that SGP's got. That's you'll want to try and break that slipstream early in the race and try and build a gap.
Yeah, definitely. If anything he can gain over a second, is going to be absolutely brilliant for him. That's what he'll be looking for, because he'll be able to break the slipstream. Steve F1 coming under pressure though from Demon R, but Demon R's coming under pressure from Conrad. And the nature of this beast, and I don't mean Connor, I do mean the track, is if you get off the racing line here, you're going to be slow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the nature of the corners, some fast sweeping corners, particularly this section. You don't want to be offline here. So it's just to run off the track in these final 2 corners. So far, everyone's just about obeying track limits.
Just about, as SRI looks. I mean, I suppose round here we really should mention what sort of the track limits are like in DGT, because people may see some lines being used where they go, oh, I don't think that's quite right. Basically, if there's a sausage curb, you can straddle it as long as it's got a normal curb next to it. So you may see people using quite a lot of curb on the apex and exit of turn 1. Demon R's coming under pressure, but he's also trying to pressure Steve F1. Is he going to be able to make the move? I don't think so. I don't think the inside line is going to be the best line, and it isn't. He's got wobbly, and Connor's going to make the move. Yes, he has. SRI coming under pressure from Mitch. So yeah, I mean, track limits isn't really that much of an issue round here, is it, Steve? Other than turn 1, maybe turn 2, maybe the final 2 corners.
Yeah, pretty much so. Those corners that you said, this middle sector, there's the more punishing gravel, turn 3 if you go off, but there's the early part of the lap, the last part of the lap, you put that tarmac went off area, so it's easy just to drift off. Good move, I just have to say, from Connor on Demon R going around the outside, great move into turn 2, but he got it done, and now Mitch looking to recover that lost ground from the first lap. He's already on the back of SRI for 5th place.
Now he is, he's trying to pressure him. Just to let you know, Steve, your microphone is kind of going up and down in volume a little bit, just to let you know. But yeah, I mean, one of the things with the track limits around, well, any track in DGT League is, if there's a curb, you can put 2 wheels on it. So as long as you've got 2 wheels on the curb, you'll be all right. Now, some people may think that that's a bit, it's not too, it's not strict enough, sorry. But to be honest, in DGT League, we're not interested in being strict or anything like that. So in comparison to previous things we may have done, we kind of go, you know what, we'll let you use the curb, we're not going to be right evil with you. As Connor making a move on Steve F1 up the inside for 2nd place, and at the same time Mitch making a move up the inside of SRI. There's a lovely couple of overtakes there as Jason, oh, it looks like we've had a big crash in the background. Couldn't see exactly who was involved there, but it looked like Hay and Gary were off the track, even though I just said I couldn't see who was involved. But yeah, a couple of lovely overtakes there as Jason and Dave. Oh, Dave, that's a risky one down into turn 3 there. Yeah, I'm not sure he fully intended that one.
Yeah, we just saw from Steve F1 the effect of being off the line there, off the racing line, because Connor got up the inside of him, he gave him the space, but then that allowed Demon R to also nip through. For Steve F1 losing 2 places there, so it just shows you just what can happen if you just
hang on. Sorry,
running wide.
Dave the Harp, something's happening with Dave the Harp there. Dave the Harp just drove off the racing line and looks like he's let Jason through. You know what, I'm thinking Dave the Harp may have been thinking that his overtake on Jason was a little bit unfair, which if it was, fair enough, he's let him back through. But what it has meant is that Dave is now under pressure. If you have a quick look at SGP had opened up a massive gap. Conrad, now in 2nd place, is slowly starting to close that gap. Demon R in 3rd, got Steve F1 right up his rear wing, and Mitch is slowly closing in on these guys. But what these guys can't afford to do is allow SGP to run away here.
Yeah, it's interesting from Connor. We've seen this in the first 2 races. Well, he tends to qualify kind of around 4th or 5th place, but he's rapid in those early laps to get himself at the sharp end. So yeah, he just seems to have a knack of having that good early pace, and he's already now on the back of SGP.
Yeah, that he is. Mitch putting the pressure on Steve F1 as well down into turn 3. A gap has formed between SRI and the pack. That's back to Jason and Dave the Harp. Dave's managed to stay ahead of the pack after letting Jason through. So yeah, I mean, Conrad, we saw him, he'd got pace at the previous race. He's on the back of SGP already. He's got pace here as well. This can only bode well for the top 6 really, because if Conrad and SGP are going to latch onto him.
Yeah, and just look at the track map, look at the gap now between SRI in 6th place and the pack. Have been able to really make a gap already, and SRI for the 2nd race in a row is keeping pace with these front running drivers. So SRI's really got into a groove with this car by the looks of it.
Yeah, isn't it? Steve F1 as well, having a look down the inside. Well, I say he's having more than a look. Well, I'll say sounded like the I know of stepped over something. But yeah, Steve F1 wasn't having a look. He'd already got the move done down into turn 1. Conrad on SGP now. He's in position to go for it. But interestingly, SGP not defending it at all. Why would that be, Steve? Why is he not bothered defending it? And why has Conrad not gone for the overtake?
Well, they've now got about a couple of second gap now to the pack behind them. So they're better off just working together now and trying to keep that pack of 4 cars behind at arm's length. You're better off having a 2-way battle at the front rather than a 4 or 5-way battle. So I think they're just probably playing a waiting game, working together for a few laps to try and build that gap and then maybe fight it out later on.
Yeah, I think you could be absolutely right. Also, there's the differences of the lines through that turn 2 corner, as we see Demon R really closing in on the back of Steve F1. Conrad's dropped off through the middle sector off the back of SGP. Mitch still there, but SRI's dropped back a little bit. Once again, I will apologise that we're not seeing the pack at the moment, but when we've got cars this close together up at the front, unfortunately that's what we're going to go and watch, the boring sods. Conrad, it's one of those things around a track like this. I look at this and go, okay, at this point Conrad is close enough across the start finish not to attack into 1 but to attack into 2 and potentially 3. But if they don't do it right, they're going to get caught by the guys behind, and this is where I think as well, if SGP's going defensive, I think he'll lose the place because the inside line is just too slow and not grippy enough for these cars.
Yeah, exactly, and you can get good traction out of these hairpins in these Porsche, and we're seeing it exactly that now, aren't we? So Mitch has got the switchback at the inside of Steve F1, and Steve F1's now under pressure. I don't know is he going to be able to keep hold of it? Demonar's going defensive, and Steve F1's going to take it around the outside, I think. I think he's got the move done.
That's
good battle in between these three.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they're still side by side. This is okay, this could get tricky for Demonar. He's going to be on the outside into the left-hander, but you don't want to be on the outside. He's going to have to be careful of Mitch sticking his nose up there, but he manages to slot in just in time. And I've got to say as well, fair play to Mitch there. He could have stuck his nose in a gap there, which if he did, Demonar wouldn't have been able to come across, but it could have ended badly. But there we go. Demonar now on the back of Steve F1. I've got to say, it was a nice overtake around the outside, but it goes to show the kind of the strengths of this car. Or Steve F1's a little bit out of shape there. Yeah, the strength of this car isn't really taking those really tight corners. The more open your steering can be, the faster the car can be, as Conrad's really close again. Oh, big sideways though.
Yeah, you have to be so careful on those curves out of turn 1. It's so easy to just hit at the wrong angle and lose the rear. This car can be quite sensitive, so yeah. Connor's really pushing, but just needs to be careful not to get out of control.
Yeah, he's okay there at the moment. I was just looking in the background as well. It looked like Demonar was putting the pressure on Steve F1 but not going for the move. So yeah, they are running very close together. But again, I mean, they've had a little bit of a battle, and look at how much they've dropped off from these two. And it's not a big battle that they've had, but it's going to continue on a little bit. I think Demonar's sort of going defensive to try and cover Mitch off, but Mitch is going to try and follow what Steve F1 did on the previous lap. Can he get up the inside? No, he can't. Demonar's covered that one off. But again, we can see Steve F1 has now got that little bit of a gap. It's amazing just how much time you can gain and lose when you're in a bit of a fight here.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation for these 3 or 4 behind, aren't they? Because they all want to get to the front of this train of cars, but if they battle too hard, they're just going to lose touch with the lead too. So it's difficult to know what to do for those drivers in that pack, really. Yeah, they noticeable how much they did lose on that one lap, just battling each other.
Yeah, I just want to mention here as well, Fluffy, you'll see in a different livery to what he would normally be running. He's also on a different part of the racetrack to what he should be running there. But oh, big sideways again for Connor. He's got away with it this time. But yeah, Fluffy running a tribute livery for Sir Captain Tom Moore, and a nice livery it is indeed, as Conrad makes the move around the outside for the lead. And interestingly, SGP not fighting that one up the inside because he knows how much it's going to cost them. Demonar trying to go around the outside of Steve F1, but he got on the curb, and that's going to allow Mitch to sneak through now.
Yeah, I mean, Connor got a lovely exit out of turn 1. That gave him the run all the way down. As I say, SGP, once he knew he'd lost the place, he just decided to tuck in behind him and maximise his speed through the corner so that he's not giving away time to those behind. Yeah. And this pack is still battling behind Mitch. Is he going to take it around the outside here? I think he is.
He's going to give it a try.
Steve's not going to be happy about that one. They're still side by side. I think he's going to have the inside into the next corner, so I think he's got the move done. Yeah, that is good racing from the pair of them there.
And it is, they've done well not to collect each other, but now, once again, they've lost a bit of time, they're under pressure. Demonar having a look at the inside of Steve F1. I doubt he's going to be going for that. No, he's not. SGP's in position to re-attack if he wants, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure SGP is going to be aware of the gap, and I'm going to start looking at the lap times these guys are doing as well. 28s and the last load of laps for Conrad 27s, as SGP got a lot of curb there. I would say sort of mid 27s is very, very good race pace. The key is whether you can be consistent with it. What I would be interested to see is what the race pace has been for Mitch, Steve F1 and Demonar at the moment, because they have been dropping back, but I know that from the practice sessions Demon R has got the same pace as SGP and Conrad around this track, as we see Jason and Dave the Harp going side by side. Nice little battle going on there. These two just all in the background. Jimmy finding another way to the barrier there. But yeah, Jason and Dave, they had a little bit of bumping last week, but this time looks like they're just going for a good old battle, as Rich Blues looking up the inside of Gary as well. Into 3. Is Dave going to be able to make the move? No, he can't. Jason.
Contact in the background there. But yeah, interesting the pace of some of the drivers in the pack here. They're doing low 28s, which is not a bad pace at all, really. And it's kind of showing why this season we're kind of seeing the pack actually a bit closer to the front group, because they're only a few seconds off that top 3, top 4 battles. If any of those guys in that pack ahead will make a mistake, they're going to end up in the pack. So it shows how close it is.
Definitely does, and it's one of those things as well. It sounds a little bit sort of counterintuitive as Steve F1's got a decent run on Mitch here, and SRI still there. I'm looking at Steve F1's lap times. Okay, there's been a couple in the 27s, but there's 28s and there's 29s, and that's where sort of these three having the little battles that they have been doing is costing them too much, and that's why that gap has been able to open up. And it is counterintuitive to say don't battle, guys, because to be honest, we want the battle, we want to see the fight, we want to see the overtaking, but it's one of those things you've got to do it selectively. As Steve F1 makes the move up the inside, Mitch going for the switchback, and interestingly Mitch having the grip to complete the switchback there. David Harper, Jason side by side once again, but as you were saying, not that far away from the pack ahead, and there's a lot in this pack.
Yeah, Jason, David Harper's had a great battle here, side by side. David Harper's moved done.
And it has a nice move around. It has a little out of shape on the exit there. And you said a few moments ago, it's almost sounded like you said that Conrad has got a nice exit, which sounded a bit dodgy. But it got me thinking about when I went to a fetish restaurant. I got towed in the hole. Okay, SGP all over the back of Conrad. He's not attacked him for the last few laps, and interestingly, look at their lap times. There was a 28.3 and then a 28.0 and then a 27.5. So their lap times have dropped a little bit, but I think SGP is now close enough that he may be able to attack into turn 1. Or, sorry, not turn 1, turn 2. But he's just dropped off through turn 1. That's not going to happen. Or Steve F1's under pressure. Big sideways for him. But SRI's now in the mix. He's got a run on Demon R here.
Yeah, Steve F1 could be under pressure. That's compromised his exit, and SRI, as you say, he's got a good run on Demon R. He's got the inside line. Can Demon R get the switch back? And now he's going to take him around the outside. And yeah, interesting, he's got the grip on the outside there, so he keeps the pace. Yeah, Dave the Ark trying the very outside there as he and Jason. Bumps all big sideways. I don't know if it was help there, but he was big sideways. He saved it. Jason's got ahead of Dave for a bit of a gap there now. I didn't see how that happened. It just seems to be to-ing and fro-ing in this pack, doesn't it? They're just swapping places all the time. Formula Gary, another one who was in practice, was showing some good consistency. So someone else today will be aiming to be near the front of this pack, or even trying to pull away from it if you can just get it ahead of
I mean, the interesting thing with this is we were sort of hinting at earlier, the sort of being a bit counterintuitive. If these guys were actually just to drive in single file as a group, they would go faster. As soon as they start going side by side, like now they're going to go slower. And because they're side by side, they are slower. But it's one of those things where they all kind of feel that if they don't cover off the inside, like now, Gary's got Fluffy up the inside. Fluffy doesn't really want to be up the inside there, but Fluffy might feel if he's not there, somebody else will go into that gap. So they managed to get themselves into single file just about for turn 1, but it's one of those things where, like now, is there much point going side by side here? Not really in this situation. If they all stayed single file as a group, they could go much faster, because Gary and Jason are going to have a nice little battle, but in come Jimmy and Hay. But this is now going to cost them all massively. I mean, look at how much Jason has lost. He was ahead of Dave the Harp, now he's back in 12th.
Yeah, it's tricky. You saw there, I don't know who it was who left the door open, and suddenly there was two cars put in there, finding the space in the inside there. So it does make it tricky to whether you just hold your racing line or go defensive. So yeah, it's not an easy decision to make either way, I don't think.
No.
And look at Jason. Oh, and that's Jimmy out of shape, I think. In the background, it looks like Jason's now recovering that lost ground. He's made another place.
Yeah. Looking back at the leaders now, Conrad still leading the way, but I kind of get SGP's last lap was a 28.7. which is massively off his pace. So I'm wondering whether he's just sort of pacing himself. It's one of those things where sitting behind Connor, they're pulling away from the guys behind, and all of the pressure is on Conrad. And these two are currently, I think, battling it out for the championship lead at the moment. So this is all SGP just putting the pressure on Conrad and seeing if he's going to be able to take it. Now, we mentioned that in previous championships, Conrad has made a couple of errors on occasion. Race one of this championship, he pretty much cut that out completely and drove a brilliant race, and he's done that as well for the second race in Spain. So it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen for the remainder of this race here as Jason trying to recover. He's got Jimmy behind him and Rich Blues. Let's look at Jason's lap times. That's kind of, he was doing okay, lowish 28s, but then all of a sudden there was a couple of the higher 28s and into the 29s, and that's cost him big time as he's trying to have a look up the inside of Rich. Was that Rich coming around the outside of him? It's Rich on the attack, isn't it?
Yeah, Rich coming up the inside of Jason. Can he get the move done? Yeah, he has. Yeah, nice move there from Rich. I think he'll have enjoyed that one. Jason now's under pressure from Jimmy as well. This is where it is difficult in the pack. Once you're kind of offline, there's just cars waiting to pounce. Jason's in that awkward situation now where he's lost momentum. And he's now just got cars all over the back of him.
Definitely.
Yeah, Jimmy's got the move done as well.
Or as he's run a bit wide, Jason's going to be up the inside. And interesting is, Gary just got big, twitchy. So did Jimmy. I was going to say, interesting, we've not seen this battle for a while, which I was going to say, let's look at their lap times. Okay, they've been improving slightly. So I'm wondering whether these four have just kind of calmed themselves and realised that the other two are pulling away. So maybe these guys have gone, right, let's not attack each other, let's just pick up the lap times. But Demon R now is on the attack, up the inside of Steve F1, and nice move there. But again, massive sideways there, that'll compromise him. But yeah, Steve F1 didn't defend that, which would suggest to me they're definitely driving in a let's lose as little amount of time as possible. Mitch, is he going to go back up the inside? No, he's not. So maybe he's thinking just cool down the tyres. Maybe it's a case of follow a different leader here. Mitch's lap times were 27.7s, and then he's done a 28.4. So we'll see how they get on. But yeah, I mean, I've got to say, it's a bit disappointing in a way, Steve, that Conrad and SGP have just buggered off up at the front.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to them. They know what they're doing at the moment. But yeah, Mitch has had a shocking lap. As you say, maybe he's just overheated the tyres, but he's struggling to make those apex at the moment. And Steve F1 to the move, he probably felt he needed to make that. Because Demon are starting to make a break in front of them.
Yeah, Steve F1's lap times as well, 27.8, 27.9, 28.3, 28.9, so lost a little bit of time there. We know Mitch is going to have had not the best of lap times there. Demon R has started opening up a gap, and it's one of those things as well. I mean, I mentioned earlier that in practice Demon R was showing us having the same pace. I think Bunce was just got himself massively out of shape. Yeah, he has, because he just flashed across the camera as Jason trying to attack Gary now. Demon R, whether he's going to be able to catch those leading two, I don't know. I think the gap might be too big, but we'll see what happens. Okay, what we've got, Jason having a look up the inside of Gary while also trying to defend. Gary tags the back of Fluffy, gets away with it, and Fluffy actually benefits from it massively.
Yeah, if you're in Demon R's position, you're probably just hoping that at some point Connor and SGP are going to really fight it out for that win. That would be the opportunity to close that gap in. So for the moment, they're probably still thinking this is not over. But Jason in the thick of it again.
Jason might be wishing this was over. Gary up the inside. Jason tried to sweep in, but Gary was there. A little bit of contact between the doors. Gary manages to get ahead. Jimmy's having a look up the inside. That's risky. 3 wide into that corner's not going to work. A little bit more contact between Jason and Gary there, and now Twilight's collected Gary, and around Gary goes. Twilight's into the gravel. Oh, it's a disaster in a way that, because, well, that's 3 drivers now in a position they really shouldn't have been. But Conrad very aggressive through. I was just looking at lap times. 28s for the last couple of laps for those guys. I didn't see what even our last lap was, but these guys are now into the 27s. Yeah, I do think that Jimmy took a little bit of a risk going 3 wide, looking up the inside into that particular left-hander. Unfortunately, there was nowhere Jason could go, because as soon as Gary starts turning in, Gary doesn't know that Jimmy's there, and yeah, 3 into 1 does not fit.
Yeah, particularly the nature of that corner, you kind of get understeer as you're going through it. So when you're going 3 wide, there's always the risk of the inside's going to understeer wide. I think that's Hayoff on the inside there, so I don't know what happened there. But yeah, certain corners you just do have to calculate the risk, and sometimes 3 wide is only going to end in people in the gravel.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a calculated risk, as you say. I mean, Conrad's just had a little bit of understeer there, and yeah, that's compromised him a little bit. And the thing is, I mean, when it comes to calculated risk, I mean, we've got calculated risks in all walks of life. I mean, I heard about 2 cowboys that were lost in the desert, and one of the cowboys saw a tree that was draped in bacon. Right? And he was like, a bacon tree, we're saved, he says, and he runs over to the tree, and all of a sudden he's shot up and he's riddled with bullets. He's dead, because it wasn't a bacon tree, it was a hambush. You gotta, I set that one up nice.
You're just doing the bacon sandwich right now.
Yeah, well, yeah, I am a bit hungry. Okay, SGP, he's still definitely putting the pressure on Conrad, isn't he? And it's interesting as well for SGP now, because he will have been keeping an eye on what's happening to that gap behind. So he may have seen that Demon R is now at the head of that pack, and he'll see if that gap's coming down. As SGP now making the move up the inside into turn 3. Conrad doesn't fight it on the way in, which is the wise thing to do. So it's a change of position, but the amount of time that these two have lost in that particular battle is going to be nothing, basically. So these two are fighting it out, but in a very, very experienced way, really.
Yeah, that particular corner, the time loss is minimal by going side by side. It's just such a short run to the next corner. You're not compromising yourself massively on the exit. So yeah, that's probably if you're going to make the move, that should be the right corner to do it. Connor now is just going to tuck in behind SGP, kind of quickly hit the reset button and try and come back at SGP as this race goes on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Conrad has had SGP following him for some time, and Conrad's been, obviously, he's been sort of right on the limit, and now he's got the opportunity to just cool his tyres down a little bit, just follow SGP and put the pressure on SGP. What have we got going on elsewhere? I'm just looking at these guys. Conrad actually is within range to attack back. Is he going to go for it straight away? It's interesting if he does. And he is, he's going for it straight away up the inside. Obviously, Conrad just wants to lead this race, but going for the inside line hasn't worked. SGP retakes the place.
Yeah, it just shows that kind of he could have, on the last lap, fought it harder and gone all defence and all the rest of it. Sometimes the best thing to do is just slot him behind and then wait for the opportunity to come back a couple of corners later, which is what he's done.
Yeah.
Now he's got the move done this time, so he's back with Connor in front. But I don't expect SGP to disappear from his mirrors.
The thing, interestingly though, SGP's last 2 laps was a 27.5 and a 27.3. That's faster than these two have been doing over the course of the whole race. Demon R is opening up a gap to Steve F1, so even though this pack has improved their pace, Demon R is trying to catch up to the guys ahead. So really, if I was Conrad, looking at what lap time SGP's just done and what lap times Conrad was doing, I would be tempted, if I was Conrad, to follow SGP for a few laps, because if he's got a decent pace, you can just use his slipstream and you're going to stay away from those guys behind. But for SGP, I mean, there's a lap there, it's saying it was a 28.9. And yeah, and that's the one where they've had a bit of a battle. So they've lost a second and a half in that lap from having that little battle into 1 and 2 and 3, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said before, when you're leading and you've got someone behind, there's more pressure as well. Sometimes it's just better to sit on the back of someone, follow them for a few laps. Yeah, so with SGP does seem to have that really great raw pace. So it's not going to be a bad move to make.
Yeah. I mean, interestingly as well, we can clearly see on the camera that third place is closing in on first and second. Steve F1 and Mitch, I think they've realised that battling might not be the way to go, and then they start fighting. Mitch's going to try it round the outside. I don't think Steve F1's going to accept that on this occasion, is he? He's got the inside line here, and he's going to make Mitch fight for it, and he can't.
Yeah, I don't think Steve F1 was going to let the same thing happen there, but interestingly, these two guys have actually pulled away from SRI now, so if they start battling again, SRI is going to start coming back into play.
Definitely. The pack, the main pack, is it looks like someone has got away from the pack a little bit. That's Dave the Harp. He's managed to break away in 7th place at the moment. He's ahead of Formula Gary, who is currently leading the remainder of the pack. Let's have a look if SGP is going to go for the move here. I've got to admit, if he thinks that Demon R is starting to close in a little bit too quick, I think SGP is going to make the move somewhere where he thinks he can then pull away from Conrad as it gets busy down into one. Pal out of shape, Hay out of shape, Hay into the barrier, Twilight out of shape as well. Couldn't tell exactly what happened there, but that's giving Gary a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, I think I might just either got tagged or break a touch too late and couldn't get it stopped. Yeah, a bit more contact into turn 2 as well. Hay got a bit of a nudge there, but they've all seemed to have got around the corner no problem. And now look at SGP. Now he's starting to turn up the whip again. Now I think he's looking racy and wants to get by here.
Yeah, I think he's realising what is slowly accumulating behind the gap. He's coming down. It's not coming down massively, but SGP has definitely got the pace. But the thing is, I mean, we've been in these situations. If you're SGP in this situation, it's risky and it's tricky, but you can be so much smoother and calmer. Whereas Conrad, he's under pressure. He's looking in the mirrors. He's wondering where to go. SGP's just thinking, go on, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? He's having a look, but he's not going to make the move. So what are you going to do? Conrad, is he looking in his mirrors? Is he thinking about what's going on around him and behind him? Yes, he is. And this is the thing, Conrad could have given himself, I don't know, 5-6 laps of going, okay, you know what, I'm going to take a breather and we'll see what you've got now. SGP going for the move into turn 2, and I think he's now sort of making his decision to go. His last 2 laps, 27.5, 27.7. He's seen Conrad go wide a couple of times there on that previous lap, so maybe Conrad's tyres a little too hot, which means SGP may just have timed it perfectly to open up a bit of a gap through that middle sector. It's Jimmy, that's too fast. He's not stopping that. He's done well to not hit the wall, but
yeah, I think SGP played it clever. Sometimes if you're just dancing all over the back of someone in their mirrors, you're just putting them under pressure to make mistakes, then that just opens up the door for you to make the move. And so, yeah, I think SGP knew what he was doing there. Yeah. But what are we looking at here? Jason on the back of Gary. So can Jason get the move done here? These two battling for 9th place. And now we're looking at Connor, who's he's coming back at SGP now. So again, can he just tick that reset button? It's better off following for a few laps, but can he in the closing laps come back at SGP?
I don't know if it's in his nature. Oh, that was a big sideways moment there. That tells me that he's either pushing a little bit too hard, harder than he needs to at the moment, because I think it's not in his nature to sit there and pressurise. He wants to pass and he wants to be in the lead, and I get that. I think Mitch used to be a similar way. if he was near you, he'd want to go past you. But Mitch, I think, has learned more about the long game, looking after the tyres, make sure the tyres are there towards the end. So we've seen it in this race when he had the difficult lap earlier. He's not really gone and attacked Steve F1 since then. If he had done, we'd have seen it. So he's obviously playing that slightly longer game, which is something that Mitch has sort of learnt and gained with experience. And Conrad's in a situation now where if he pushes really, really hard, he's going to hurt his tyres and he's actually going to go slower. But if he keeps himself nice and calm, follows SGP's lines, he'll realise that he can just sit there and slowly apply that pressure as we're on lap 22, nearly 23 of 27. But if Conrad's going wide at this final corner, which we've seen a couple of times, and yeah, again, he's pushing a little bit too quick through that corner. Now his tyres are a little bit dirty, so he may not be able to get the car slowed down how he wants into one, and then he's got to be careful of the apex curve.
Yeah, it's showing the difference in experience here. Obviously, Conrad's searching for his first winning DGT, whereas SGP's been here so many times. He just SGP knows how to play the long game really well, and just knows how to play patient when he needs to, when to push when he needs to. That's something I'm sure we'll see from Connor. The more he's at the front, he'll learn when to attack and when not to, as we've seen with Mitch. Now going for the move, he's sat behind Steve F1 for a few laps. Now he's going to go for it. Yeah,
the thing is, he's gone for the move into turn 2 there, but I don't think to accomplish the move into, because we can see Steve F1's got the better run out of the corner, but he's in position to make the move into 3. And so Mitch has also react. But again, okay, there he's. For whatever reason, Mitch at that moment doesn't feel he's got the grip in the tyres to really push that move and then stay ahead. So that's where he's showing that experience that he's learned of now isn't the time. And it's... Some people might think it's really boring. I find it fascinating because it's showing a driver evolving and learning, and it's a little bit like SRI. SRI has done bugger all in this race, but he's having an absolute stormer. As Mitch, oh, this is a risky one. That's a risky one. He's going for it though. Gets Steve F1 out of shape, and Mitch makes the move. So Mitch pouncing at a moment where he thought it was more opportunistic, and it's worked for the moment. Conrad's dropped off from SGP a little bit. He's still pushing. Oh, big sideways! No. Big sideways! Has he saved it? No, he's not!
He's lost. Oh, that's a huge error from Connor. Just got up on that curve. Lost the rear end. He's not been able to catch it. And that's going to be soul destroying. Looking at all the cars going by. Spun again. Oh, that's the race win. Potentially gone.
Yeah, I think you're a bit optimistic there. The race win has definitely gone for him there. Unfortunately, Dave Harp is going to be sort of like, oh, sorry, Connor, thank you. But yeah, I feel for Connor there. The things we've seen it. It's one of the things when you do commentary a lot. You see things like that happen quite often, as Rich getting very close to the back of Fluffy there, and Gary on the inside of Rich as well. Jason's managed to get at the head of this pack. The question is, can he pull away? And we'll have to wait and see. Fluffy under pressure from Rich. Rich moving to the inside. Gary really good to the inside, very aggressive on the brakes. Jimmy tags the back of Rich. Has someone disappeared there? Fluffy goes a little bit wide. I don't know if he was nudged that way or not. I don't know. Difficult to tell with that camera angle. And that Fluffy's got the inside. Ooh, this could be risky.
Yeah, Gary bowled on the brakes into 3 there, and he got it stopped nicely. And now, Fluffy's now at the inside as well of Rich, and Rich and his good buddy Jimmy now having a battle side by side. This one's going to go all the way to the end, as we always see in the pack.
Oh, Fluffy got a little bit out of shape there. May have just tagged the side of Gary as well, and Jimmy and Rich are going to be all over them. Jason, if he can see this in his mirrors, as he runs a little bit too wide there, he's not going to be liking what he's seeing as Fluffy up the inside of Gary now towards turn 1. This is a treacherous situation for Fluffy being where he is, because he's going to be compromised mid-corner, maybe compromised on the exit. Gary runs a little bit too wide there, a lot too wide there really, as Jimmy and Rich bump drafted to try and get past Fluffy up towards 2. Can they get the move done? Jimmy looking up the inside as we have a look at Conrad trying to make a move back on Dave the Harp, so Connor trying to recover. I'm just looking at the tower on the left. We can see in the background there Fluffy has managed to stay ahead of the rest of the pack with the Jason Conrad making the move. And I suppose you'd have to be begging the question, Steve, whether Conrad's going to be driving angry at the minute.
Yeah, it'd be so easy to lose his head in that situation, but he got that move done nicely. I don't think Dave the Hart thought that one too much. I think he knows Connor in this race is quicker, so it didn't make too much sense to fight that one. Dave the Hart's on for a very solid, comfortable 7th place. And now we're looking at SRI catching Steve F1, so SRI still keeping himself in the game.
Yeah, SGP's pace has definitely picked up as Demon R was closing in on them. Demon R's lap time has been very consistent as SGP's have picked up. Mitch, after making the overtake, he's timed it right to pull away from Steve F1, so I don't know whether Steve F1 has struggled with his tyres or just had a moment somewhere, but you're right, SRI is all over the back of him, so Steve F1 may have to realise he's got a battle for what will be the last 2 laps. We are on the penultimate lap of the race as the pack is making their way around turn 1 as we look at that now. Jason leading the pack up towards turn 2, and he's not quite far enough ahead to be safe here really. Is Jason, yeah, and that's kind of what I mean. That's a disaster for Jason. Oh dear. See, Jason, from the looks of it, you'd look at that and go, Jason was far enough ahead to really he should have been safe in that corner. Okay, Fluffy's letting him by the looks of it then that would suggest that Fluffy may have made a bit of a mistake there and collected Jason, but yeah, that's a difficult one to take that. SGP around the final corner for the final time, and look at that, he's not even going on the curbs around the final corner. Last thing he wants to do now is throw this away, but look at his lap times, the last 8-9 laps. 27 6s, 7s, 3s, 4s, Demon R's, 27s, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, consistency across the board. Mitch has managed to pick his pace up a little bit quite nicely. Steve F1, he's got SRI up his arse, so that's going to just kill his concentration. And for Conrad, I mean, he's got back on the pace, he had a 28.7 last lap. But yeah, he just needs to, as painful as it is, just needs to bring this home now, because he's still in the fight at the championship.
Yeah, in 6th place will still be solid points. He's shown he's going to be a consistent threat this season. But yeah, Steve F1, he'll be scratching his head a little bit. He qualified on the front row, just very close to SGP, but a long way off his pace in the race. So he'll be scratching his head while he's now having to defend his 5th place here. SRI, again, driving brilliant in this race, you've got to say.
Yeah, I mean,
one of the outstanding drivers of the race once again.
He really is, and to be fair, I mean, he's... I don't know what I was going to say. I don't know how to explain it. He's in this position on sheer ability of driving. He's not there because of the boost. He's there because he's kept the car on the road at a decent pace. The boost allows you to catch up. It doesn't allow you to stay there. So SRI is legitimately in that position. SGP is going to take the victory here. Demon R, he's managed to close the gap a bit, but not enough. But I think he'll be happy enough with 2nd place. Mitch, I don't think he was expecting 3rd 10 laps ago, but he'll take him. Steve F1 survives for 4th place ahead of SRI in 5th. Conrad, I've got to say, I think we all feel for Conrad in this one. He had the pace for the win. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. I think he's not going to be happy with himself in this one, but it's 6th place for Conrad. Dave Hart manager 7th, and formerly Gary 8th. Rich Blues 9th ahead of the pack, and it looks like we've got a couple of slow runners. Jason and Artpal. Artpal is actually not on the tower at the moment, so I think we may have lost Artpal in those last couple of laps. Difficult to tell while we were not on the pack there. And while I remember, I will send Steve F1, show Steve F1 a picture of the unconfirmed race result, because it's handy for us to know about that. But a very interesting race. But what I was trying to say about SRI there, Steve, was that he was kind of there without really doing anything. He's not done anything special to be in that situation, but He's doing extremely well to be in that situation. He's doing everything right to be in that situation. There were times where he could have attacked cars ahead in that race, but if he had have done, he may not have ended up as close as he did at the end. Whereas at the end, he's putting under pressure a two-time champion.
Yeah, no, I think we've seen it even previous championship with SRI. He's a driver who does tend to just hold back, and even when he's in the pack, hold back and just watch the battles in front of him, just keep drive his own race, and then kind of pick people off at the end. And yeah, he did drive a really smart race there. Just watched the battles in front of him, kept himself in the mix. Couldn't quite get the position at the end, but I don't think he'll be too disappointed with that, finishing as close as he did to some of the drivers that were ahead of him.
I don't think he'll be disappointed about it either. I mean, I don't think there's anybody, and I don't mean this as any disrespect, SRI, I don't think there was anybody that would have expected SRI to be that close to those leading 4 or 5 guys in these last 2 races. I mean, we've seen him have good races before, but it's becoming a bit more consistent now, which means he's probably going to nail everybody next week, but have an absolute shocker. But yeah, I mean, last week he was there as a bit of a driver of the day kind of thing. Not that we do that, but he'd have to be sort of up there again. But what I do want to touch on there is that there was a crucial part in that race up at the front where SGP and Conrad, once Conrad had got into second place, him and SGP pulled away while the others started fighting, and none of them could fully recover from that. SGP's racecraft in this race was very Prost-like.
Yeah, as we said before, it comes with experience. We've seen SGP in previous championships drive like that, where he just will play the waiting game, often likes to just sit there behind people, look after his tyres, you know, when we've had fuel as a factor, look after the fuel, and then he's always thinking about where he's going to be at the end of the race, and not where he's going to be on like halfway through or whatever lap. It's all about where you are at the end, and that just comes with the experience. Whereas for Connor, obviously he's someone who's just sort of becoming a more consistent front runner, but at the moment there's just that little more urge from him in, I need to be leading, I need to be winning, and it's just that the more experience you have of being at the front, the more you kind of know when to push and when not to. Yeah,
I mean, if there's one thing we've seen from this race is you don't put pressure on SGP by being in front of him, because he will just happily sit there and follow you because you're the one that's going to be under pressure. So it'll be interesting to see how Connor goes on from here, because it's clear he's got the pace, it's clear he's got the ability, and he's been unlucky. He has been massively unlucky in that race. Just on that one particular lap, car was slightly out of position and away he goes. But I can imagine he would have been kicking himself. I mean, well, he's not on commentary, so he probably has been kicking himself. Either that or his missus has like gaffer taped him, was like, you are not doing commentary until you've done better. But yeah, I mean, interesting race for Mitch. They seemed to have pace early on, then got to a certain point in the race where he struggled. Don't know whether he'd overheated the tyres, but he got to a point in the race where I think he realised that he had to change his approach in this race. He couldn't just go thrash it everywhere, every lap. But that change of the way he raced has resulted in him finishing in 3rd place instead of 5th.
Yeah, I mean, what we're seeing with Connor now is what we were kind of seeing with Mitch a couple of championships ago, where he'd have that pace, but then when it started to go wrong in races, it just all unravelled for him. Whereas now he's got that knowledge now. He recognised in that race that maybe he'd overheated the tyres or whatever, and he just needed to go and sit behind Steve F1 and Demon R for a couple of laps, just get himself back into the groove, and then he finished 3rd. So yeah, with Mitch, we're seeing a more rounded driver now, where he can just adapt in races and do what he needs to do.
Definitely. I mean, for the rest of the pack, obviously we didn't get to see a whole lot of what was going on in that race because of how close things were up at the front. For Dave the Harp, though, he broke away from the pack. He had a decent battle with Jason early on, but managed to break away from the pack. And I think, to be honest, I think he'd be fairly pleased with that 7th place, because we've seen in the past Dave the Harp get swamped by the pack late on. And we saw it in race 1 of this championship. He unfortunately hit the wall and ended up right. I think for Dave, a good objective at this race was, let's break away from the pack, and if I can catch or keep up with guys ahead, fair enough, but number 1, break away from the pack and stay away from them. Had a decent battle with Jason and then managed to achieve that objective. You mentioned about Gary having pace in practice. Gary really did have pace in practice. Unfortunately, he had about an hour of stress and panic of internet issues before the race, which for anyone that knows, if you do any kind of racing like this, you want to just get on and do a few laps, warm up, chill out. The last thing you need to be doing is stressing because your internet ain't working. So yeah, I don't think Gary was too pleased before the race started. But in the end, he's actually finished in a decent position. We've seen Gary in the past have decent races and end up at the back because he had an unfortunate last lap. On this occasion, I think he's not necessarily had the best of races, but he's ended up in a decent position.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, you're quite right about the distractions he's had before. I mean, we've seen it with SGP in the past, where he's had distractions in the hour before the race, and then he's just nowhere near the pace that he normally is. So it does affect you, but you know, you've got to credit Gary, because he could have really easily just lost his head in that race with incidents and the frustrations before the race, but he's kept his head, he's come back through. Yeah, he'll probably think maybe I could have got 7th in that race and done what Dave the Harp did and pulled away from the pack, but no, he's still done well there, and he can now repeat that kind of pace and consistency. Then he'll be putting in himself in those positions more often, like Dave the Harp's done today.
Yeah, definitely. Rich Blues finished in 9th. To be fair, a decent result for Rich. Didn't see a lot of what was going on in the race for him, but yeah, to get up into 9th place, I think he'd be fairly happy. Twilight finished in 10th place, but I do know, I think with about 5-6 laps to go, he actually parked up at the side of the road to allow a few cars past that he felt he had knocked off the track. And to be honest, he must have sacrificed, I don't know, 10-15 seconds in doing the right thing. Now, obviously we didn't see it on the race footage, it's just something I know my spies had told me about. But it's not easy to do that kind of thing, go, you know what, I think I've made a bit of a balls up there, or I'm going to pull over and I'm going to wait for everybody that was involved. But that is exactly what he did. So for him to be able to do that and recover into 10th place, respect. Big respect, to be honest. Hay had an interesting race, had a massive crash with Gary at turn 1 through a slight technical failure, looking in the mirror in a braking zone, not the wisest of things to do, but he managed to finish 11th ahead of Bunsell, who, to be fair, well, I'll ask you this, Steve. How do you describe Bunsell's races at the moment? Because obviously we've not seen a lot of him in that race. But
yeah, it's interesting with Bunsell, isn't it? Because in the past we'd really see him involved, particularly in the last lap backwards, with going for moves and you know, sometimes unfortunately treating 1 or 2 incidents. But now I think we're seeing a very different Bunsell in the way he's driving. That he's trying to play a slightly calmer game in that pack and try and just pick off opportunities in a different way. So yeah, I think the reason we're not seeing Bunsell as much is I think he is trying to just be a bit calmer and play the longer game. And yeah, because we know Bunsell, you know, on his day he's got good pace and he's got good awareness.
Yeah,
and I think he's just trying to just improve and be an even better driver.
Yeah, I mean, I do know that think it was Twilight in his post-race comments had mentioned that he had good battles with Bunsell in this race today. Jimmy finished in 13th place. We saw him have a few interesting moments throughout the race. I mean, unfortunately for Jimmy, he's still in that situation where he doesn't get a lot of time to practice. And I mean, for a lot of the guys, we get to meet up on a Monday and we do a few laps and we do some of the random races, and a lot of us are very used to driving side by side next to each other, and unfortunately Jimmy doesn't get that time to spend with us. So unfortunately for Jimmy, a lot of his side by side time is in these races, which can be very interesting at times. But yeah, it's difficult as well to know exactly how his races have gone when we've not seen too much of what was happening on the track. Fluffy though, finishing in 14th, I think he won't have been too pleased in that one. I think he definitely had a difficult race with a few incidents throughout it, and we saw him also have the incident where it looked like he'd waited for Jason, so it's one of those respect again. And Jason, obviously I'm guessing something happened on the last couple of laps there, with him finishing as far back as he did, so I don't think he would have been too happy. And Art Pal didn't finish, and I am hearing from my spies that on lap 26 he went off at turn 2. Don't think he collected anybody, but then went off at turn 3 as well, and I think he was just so frustrated that he decided to jump out of the car, throw the keys into the crowd and bugger off into the hills. But other than that, an interesting bloody race.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the very interesting thing with this championship is just how close it is all the way through the field. I think it's probably the closest championship we've had in terms of the lap times of the fastest drivers and the ones in that pack.
Yeah.
So I think that's shown, first of all, you know, this car's giving drivers confidence, but it's also showing how drivers are improving overall as well. I know we've had one or two incidents today, and it's unfortunate, but in general terms, yeah, I think we've seen just improvements from most of the grid, and it's resulting in closer competition.
Well, yeah, I mean, the lap times in qualifying have been so close recently. It's brilliant to see, and it does pan out into the race as well. And I mean, okay, this result isn't confirmed yet. I'll do that shortly, but the unconfirmed result, if that stands in, say, the top 6, then all of a sudden that has really tightened things up. I think SGP is going to be leading. He's opened up a bit of a gap, but all of a sudden Demon R, Mitch, Steve F1, SRI and Conrad, I think they're going to be extremely close on their points. And it's going to be fascinating to see how that pans out. But also with Dave having his result, I think he may have just broke away a bit on the standings from the pack, perhaps, but he's had a couple of difficult races early on. But Gary and Rich finishing 8th and 9th, and Twilight finishing 10th in this one, I think that's going to really close the standings up there as well. So in a few moments we will check that out. But I just want to sort of ask Steve a couple of questions, really. One of it, just a random question: did you ever have a nickname as a kid, or did you ever have a girlfriend that gave you a nickname?
Not really, no.
Not really? Bloody hell. Right, well,
probably just wit. Alright,
fair enough. Well, during that race I very nearly started calling Conrad Big Sideways, because he kept getting big sideways. But the only reason I asked is because I remember the other day that one of my ex-girlfriends used to call me Jigsaw, and I always thought it was like because of, do you want to play a game? And then one day she said, no, it's not because of that, it's because I've got to be desperately bored to do you.
Oh my god.
Oh dear. And on that note, I think I need to go and get myself some comfort food, although I'm not too keen on the drink. It tastes a bit like washing powder. Someone will get that. Comfort washing clothes.
Oh, okay.
To be fair, I said washing powder, it was meant to be the liquid, but anyway, yeah. Right, I've got extra jokes in this week because I didn't get many in last week. I'm going to save me my last one for next week. Okay, Steve F1, thank you very much for... I suppose I should explain, you are Steve F1 as well. Yeah, thank you very much for joining us on commentary.
Pleasure as always.
Alright, and yeah, let's have a look at what that's done to the confirmed race result and the championship standings. So after a fascinating race, let's confirm the race result, and the only differences from the image we saw earlier is that unfortunately Hay in 11th place has a -2 point penalty for an incident he was involved in, and Art Powell in 16th place, although he did not finish. Unfortunately, he has also got a -2 point penalty for an incident that he was involved in. Details on those are on the Facebook page if the drivers are not aware of them. Okay, so SGP taking the win, 20 points. He'll have opened his gap up at the top of the championship. Demon R with his best result of this season, which is a little bit odd, but there we go, second place for him. Mitch manages to recover nicely to finish in third, ahead of Steve F1 in fourth. SRI having a brilliant season so far, he sits in fifth. Conrad finished sixth, disappointing for him, we all can feel that. Dave the Hart with a solid race finished in seventh place, ahead of Formula Gary, who headed the pack towards the finish line, just ahead of Rich Blues, Twilight, Hay, Bunsell, Jimmy, Fluffy Planet and Jason. Art Powell, as we mentioned, did not finish, so a frustrating end of the race for him. Okay, let's take a look then at what that'll do for the championship standings. Well, that's definitely made things interesting and definitely mixed things up a little bit. So SGP leading the way now on 55 points. He's got a 9-point lead ahead of Steve F1, who's in second place on 46 points. Mitch only 3 behind Steve on 43, and then 2 behind Mitch is Demon R on 41. Conrad unfortunately drops down to 5th place. He's now on 40 points. SRI trying to make that 6th place all his own, sitting on 30 points at the moment. Got 11-point gap back to Jason in 7th place, who is only 2 ahead of Dave the Harp, and Twilight, who is only 3 behind Jason and 1 behind Dave. Dave and Twilight both jumping up into the top 9 after this result. Jimmy drops down to 10th place on 15 points, and Rich Blues is now tied with Formula Gary on 11 points. No, it's not, it's 11th place and it's 14 points. And there, well, if you couldn't get any more unlucky, good luck Fluffy, 13th place, 13 points. Yeah, score 1 point, you'll be alright. Hay in 14th on 10 points. Art Powell, 15th place, loses a couple of points due to the unfortunate penalty, and Bunsell gets himself back into the positive points, so he's now on 2, and Tyler drops to 0, still having not raced yet, but hopefully we will see him on track at some point this championship. Okay, it's been a very interesting race, and it's going to set us up for what could potentially be an absolute mental race. Because the next race is once again at the Red Bull Ring, but for the short circuit, which means we're going to be having 50 laps around that tiny little course in these Porsches. It's going to be a very, very different race from what we've experienced here today. But there's also the chance of well, I was going to say carnage, but it only in a sense that everything's going to be so close and compact. I don't think we're going to see a big spread across the field here. It'll be interesting to see how we go, because I don't think we've really ever driven cars this fast around such a short circuit. So we'll have to find out how that's going to go, and there's only one way to find that out, and that is to join us next time in the DGT League. Have a good one, everybody, and we'll see you all again soon.